The first thing to go quiet is the bird bath. It usually sings with the tapping of sparrows and the thin trickle of hose water. Now, in the late afternoon of a May Sunday, the water stills into his skin, and the blue jay on the fence lifts its head as if it has remembered an appointment elsewhere. A mother in Joplin stands at the sink with a dish towel, watching the sky turn the strange green. That means the light is wrong. The air is the color of bruise. The ceiling fan clicks once, then resumes, trying to make sense of thickening heat. On a bed in a small room down the hall, a cotton doll lies face up under the edge of a window. A child has written her name in purple marker on the inside of the doll's dress. Crooked letters that march in the up and down rhythm of a 7-year-old's hand. A private proof that someone knows this object belongs to someone else. The doll's yarn hair is splayed like rays. The girl had left her there, told she could watch her favorite show if the laundry was put away, and then called to the kitchen when the first siren sounded. Noise in tornado country is a language. You learn the difference between the monthly test and the ache in a siren that means you should move. At 5:17 p.m., the warning sounds. People in Joplin have heard warnings before, and some of them say out loud what they have said other times. We'll wait. Others check phones, step out onto porches, and look in the direction everyone learns to look. The western horizon is no longer a line but a wall. A shelf cloud darkens the highways where traffic stacks near Ranger Line Road. Brake lights like beads on a string. In the parking lot at Home Depot, 2 men load boards into a truck with unnecessary efficiency, as if speed itself could argue against wind. Inside St. John's Regional Medical Center, a nurse finishes charting a lab result and stares at the wall clock with the let's get through it expression that hospitals cultivate for storms. The building's long windows reflect a sky that seems to lean in. An elderly man pushes his walker with the patience of someone who has outlived a century's worth of weather. The generator is where generators have always been down, out of sight, in a space that seems safer because it isn't part of the sky. The second siren is closer to the throat of the city. The mother wipes her hands on the dish towel and calls to her daughter to leave the doll. Now, they go to the inner hallway. 2 towels and a mattress, and the cramped rectangle people draw around themselves when the outside is not an option. They know the drill. Shoes, helmets if you have them, the back of a hand against the floor to feel vibration. In a nearby house, a man stands in the frame of a bathroom door, still doing the thing you do when you aren't ready to admit you're late. The roar is not a train, but it has that register along. Unbroken scream in the wood and nails around you. At the hospital, the alarms cut through the beeping chorus of machines. Tornado on the ground. Someone says into a handheld radio, words that are never just words. An orderly looks over the parking lot, eyes skimming the horizon until the horizon moves. A gray, churning wall, a mile wide, eating houses without bothering to chew. On the 12th floor, a window bows like a sail. Glass leans into the room, and then reconsiders and then fails all at once, the air turning into knives. At 5:34 p.m., the tornado takes ownership of a neighborhood with a single, decisive gesture. The house with the bird bath becomes a catalog of its parts. Walls and peel. Insulation becomes pink snow. Nails sing out of wood. The hallway where the mother and daughter lie is narrowed again by debris pressed down by a force with fingers everywhere. The child's grip finds cloth and does what children do. Makes the world small enough to hold in a hand. The doll's dress tears at the seam. The mattress lifts. The bathroom door gives. Then comes back to the frame. Then goes Hawaii. Home Depot's roof lifts like a lid and slides as the tilt-up walls push inward, under sudden pressure, then fall outward under the nothing that remains to hold them. Cars are moved as if by thought. A man whose life has been a parade of risks kneels behind a counter and realizes that none of those risks meant anything in language this large. St. John's lists under a blow. No building is built for. An ambulance skids in its bay, as if the earth under it has become quick. And then, because even a storm has phases, there is an instant's pause in the center where the mind can assemble a sentence and get through it before the rest of the sentence collapses. In that breath, as the hallway groans, and a siren fails, and the roof is no longer above the people who need a roof, the child's small hand clenches the rip of fabric and, as what's left of the house tilts, let's go. The doll slides into a space that didn't exist the second before, and then is gone. The sound fills with gravel and things that used to be bookshelves. The wind becomes the only idea in the world. Alights some more snobs and arcs, and is gone. The mother calls the child's name and can't hear her own voice over the tornado's thick vowel. She says it again into air that does not care. The storm leans forward and pushes through, leaving behind a map that has nothing in common with the one that was true a minute ago. The quiet afterward is a kind of violence. It looks like safety because the screaming has stopped. but it is full of other noises, people calling names, the tinkle of glass still choosing to fall, the drip of broken pipes. Dust hangs in the bright new air like a curtain someone forgot to draw back. You sit up inside what used to be your hallway, and the sky is where the ceiling was, a sudden dome of blue made obscene by its normalcy. The mother coughs, because she is full of drywall and fear. She claws at the mattress that kept them from the worst of the debris, then at boards heavy as intentions. The child's name again, this time with the hard edges knocked off by dust. A neighbor's voice answers from somewhere that used to be a kitchen. Strangers appear the way strangers do in these moments, in their own houses and in yours, because where one home ends and another begins has been rewritten by the wind. Hands make levers, someone pries and someone lifts, and someone says, there, and a small arm appears in a square of light, and then a head with hair made grey by insulation, eyes squeezed shut against it all. They are dazed, but they are breathing. That is the entire accounting system for a while. Breaths per minute, names of neighbors, who went where, who hasn't answered. Somewhere close, a whistle is blown to get attention. Schoolyard loud. A man on a bicycle swerves through a maze of lumber with a first aid kit bungeed to his back, as if he is trained, which he has not, except in the way of living. At St. John's, nurses lift patients, whose machines have gone dumb. A window frame that used to hold an entire world now holds nothing. The cross that crowns the building takes on the improbable role of landmark in a city that, in minutes, lost so many. Staff gather in stairwells and count, then count again, then start carrying their people down. The smell of natural gas takes up residence in the nostrils. An ambulance trapped under a twisted roof honks, and a firefighter climbs over what used to be an emergency room waiting area with a saw. There are no waiting rooms in this, language-only rooms. In yards, in parking lots that are barely lots, phones strain for bars. The towers that carry the invisible are bent or gone. Sirens that would summon more bodies to help are quiet or lost under the insistence of hundreds of smaller emergencies. Down to lions writhe in shallow arcs, spitting warnings no one needs spelled. A man in a church parking lot holds his phone up to the sky like a sacrament. Somewhere in that thin signal is a text that says we're okay, and somewhere else a text that says where are you, and somewhere else a silence that says a lot. The dowel that slid out of the cracked house has its own physics. The wind that took trucks and laid them in ditches took this small body of cloth and yarn and threw it into a current of splinters and shingles and bits of lives. A creek in flood widened into a river, everything afloat. The purple letters inside the torn dress moved as the dress moved her. YSN identity hidden and declared at the same time. By morning, the tornado's path is a finger laid down across maps, across subdivisions and churches and stores, with signs the wind tried to pronounce. National Weather Service teams walk it with clipboards, counting stories in the debris pile and estimating wind speeds from roof bolts snapped and vehicles flung. The verdict will be EF-5, the top of the scale, with winds above 200 miles per hour. A wit, at times near a mile. A forward speed that carried destruction from west to east, with a certainty you could feel in your teeth. The number of dead starts at one number, and climbs 30, 60, 100. It will stop at 158 direct, with hundreds more injured, the worst single tornado in more than half a century. People in other cities read the numbers as if they are weather distant. Impersonal land turned the page at breakfast. In Joplin, the numbers are faces and hollow spaces at dinner tables. Time splits into before, -5, -30, -4, and after. Pictures and paper start landing in fields far away, taped to telephone poles by strangers who put their own names under the salvage, promising to wait. The air has hands. A wedding photo is found 2 counties over, a prom portrait in a ditch 60 miles away, a check stub, a grocery list, a report card with a gold star. Photos of photos begin to circulate in a newly frantic way. A Facebook page appears. No one planned it, in a meeting in which people post what the wind redistributed. Someone recognized these. The page blooms to tens of thousands, then more. Each image, a small island of memory held up to the vaguest of lighthouses. On the second day, a volunteer in gloves plucks a doll out of a tangle of wire near where the high school used to be. He shakes it gently, and dust comes off in a gray cloud. It is headless for a moment in his grip. Then the yarn hair emerges from a sleeve. He looks for a child and sees none. Then looks for a trash bag and thinks better of it. Then carries the doll to a table set up under a blue tent, where a woman with a water bottle and a notebook takes it as if it were a person. The doll's dress is torn, but inside the hem, the purple letters are still there, emphatic in their childish way. The woman does not say this out loud, but her expression says it. This one might find its person back. The doll, because it holds a name, is a message delivered by wind. In a shelter, in a church, in a corner of the gym by the stage where the broken piano is. A child gazes at the spot on a cot where her doll would fit and does not look up when the mother says it will be okay. Because okay is an idea too large to manage. The mother's phone buzzes hard finally. A flood of texts, all arriving in a braided rush. Have you seen this page? They're posting things. Somebody sent a picture of what might be your. And in the small square of a screen there is an image. A cloth face, smudged, the edge of a dress. A swirled letter that could be an A, or maybe just a mark. And the mother's stomach does the thing the ground did yesterday, drops out from under. The day stretches longer than it should. The blue tent with the table becomes one of 1,080 hawk offices for grief and luck volunteers with clipboards. Names called out. Index cards with addresses, the wind made meaningless. People show up to claim photographs. Report what they found in the grass. Point out where their house used to be with a hand that tries to shape the air into a wall. The doll sits on a cloth, beside a tin of name tags. How strange, a volunteer thinks, to put a name tag on a thing already named. A man who has not slept since Saturday night steps around the table, squints. Is that, he begins, and the woman with the notebook asks him without much ceremony to write his name and the name of the child. No conclusions are drawn yet. A lot of things look like other things when they are covered in this much dirt and memory. Somewhere in the shelter, the child who loved that doll ties shoelaces together because no one has told her to stop. And her mother thinks for a second, just one, that there might be a ways back from here, and then the hospital wristband on her own arm makes a plastic crackle that says, not yet. The center of a disaster is not the moment of impact. It is the long corridor afterward, when every minute arrives carrying two ideas. Survival and count. The hospital, relocated by necessity into the parking lot, and then into the buildings that can be made to bear weight, becomes a village. 4 poles glitter in sunlight. Nurses move in a choreography dictated by heat and scarcity, and the metric of which patient can wait another 10 minutes. An exhausted doctor sits on the curb and composes himself out of breath and habit, then stands and goes back in before he has fully finished either. In the neighborhoods along 20th Street and through the grid where the tornado swung its mile-wide shoulder, people walk with cups of coffee they don't remember making. They stand in front of piles of kindling that used to be their homes and point, giving tours to the air. There, that was the hallway. The cat was the windsock at the high school, tries to straighten. The flag over the police department finds its position and stays there. The tally of the dead is not kept in the open, because nothing good comes of public arithmetic here. In homes with walls still standing, refrigerators hum and then go silent. Eggs will be a luxury again for a while. Elsewhere, generators arrive and exist for their noise and the promise that noise makes. The smell of chainsaw oil starts to overlay the chemical sweetness of shattered insulation. People who have never worn boots before buy boots. People who have never worn gloves before learn how to pull wood without gaining splinters with every breath. On a table under the blue tent, the doll's face is cleaned with a cloth dipped in a mason jar. The purple letters inside the torn hem come up. Clairel was the second Y wrong and then right. Written by a child who had enough confidence to keep going. The volunteer takes a picture and posts it with the kind of caption you can only write after the wind names you found near 26th in Connecticut. Purple dress, name inside. Please, share. The platform does the thing it does when algorithms meet urgency. The image jumps zip codes without a passport. Commence a crew under it like Barnacalzis. These yours. My niece had one like it. Alisa, who... A woman tags 3 friends, named Alisa. Out of habit. A man whose job is copy editing corrects the spelling in his head and feels ashamed of himself and clicks share anyway. At the hospital, where patients are layered into rooms that used to be offices and cafeterias. The mother with dust in her lungs and a bruised collarbone sits in a chair too low for her height and stares at a TV that is on without much volume. A reporter in a bright jacket stands in front of a ruin that used to be a city block and says words that fit neatly into a minute and a half. Because time on TV is time, even when nothing else is. The crawl at the bottom of the screen announces numbers in a font that is not sorry. A nurse with forearms corded from lifting points at the wristband and asks if the patient needs anything else. Ice chips, a phone charger. The mother says, have you heard about a page where they put things they found? The nurse, who has heard, lifts her own phone and writes the name of the page on the back of a napkin. In the next bed, another woman stares at the same TV and tries to subtract herself from the math under the crawl. The claimants come in two kinds: those who know by a pang that this object is theirs, and those who want it to be because wanting is as abundant as plywood now. An older couple brings a photograph of a granddaughter, a doll under her arm. The dress is similar, but not the same. The trimming, slightly different. They know it as soon as they get their eyes on it, and the disappointment is intimate and private and public. They thank the volunteer anyway, and leave with something else, another person's prom picture in their hands, because grief is a generous currency. By late afternoon, the post about the doll has found the mother. Someone in the shelter holds out a phone under the fluorescence and says, "Is this her?" And she takes the phone and asks her own eyes to behave like instruments. The purple letters are too plain to disbelieve. The dress is right. The smudges are gravy on a Sunday shirt. If she had breath to scream, she would. Instead, she squeezes a phone, as if by ringing it, she can make the doll appear in the space beside her daughter. They sign names on a clipboard. They ride in a car that smells like gas and cinnamon because of a spilled bottle of something someone gave them. And they pass places they can no longer name. The child is quiet in that way that means she is trying not to hope too hard. The mother reaches across the gap and finds her hand. Anyway, they pull up where the tents bloom like invasive species. The girl sees the table from the car window and says her doll's name. The special name you give something you have loved enough to assign it, a secret identity beyond the label assigned at the factory. Her voice cracks, shy of sound after so much noise. But nothing in these days moves in straight lines. There are other families in line, other claims, other forms to fill. Someone else has said the doll may be theirs because their cousin's child is named Elisa too, and their house was 2 blocks from where it was found. A volunteer asks for patience with a sincerity that would be sweet in any other circumstance, and a salt in the mouth here. The mother says, "I can show you," and reaches for the seam of the doll's dress. For that place where only her own hand would know to look for a second mark, a star scratched in with the same purple marker on the inside stitch where she patched the dress in February. She stops because the doll is still across the table, and the rules are here to prevent chaos. The day turns toward evening, the light coppering the piles of ruin, making a skyline out of things that were never meant to be tall. At the hospital across town, a nurse tapes a sign above an ice chest that says ice for diabetics first, because triage is an ethical art and a set of sharp tools you hold at once. Somebody finds a wallet under a truck that used to be a car, and inside is a photo of 2 kids in matching shirts that read "Go Lions." A man pushes a shopping cart full of the things he could salvage, 2 shirts still on hangers, a coffee can with coins, a lamp-based sand when he hits a rut. He insists on lifting the cart as if lifting changes who he is. Onto the blue tent, the day narrows. The volunteer with a notebook looks at the mother for a beat, and then at the girl, and then at the crowd behind them. She notes, on say, a decision with its own kind of audible click. "Bring her forward," she says. And the mother steps into the space between rules and mercy. The doll is placed on the table like an exhibit. The girl reaches without knitting any rhetoric, her hand a reflex that meets cloth. She flips the hem and shows the star in the seam only she and her mother knew about. There is no auditor for such proof. Only the quiet of those around who recognize evidence, delivered in a form that operates below policy. The volunteer crosses out one name on a form and writes another. The dough is handed across. The girl presses her cheek to it and inhales dust and old lamplight and the sweetness of a laundry detergent whose box went missing, and feels her body remember which way to turn to be held. Behind them, a man clears his throat and says to no one in particular, and everyone at once, "My aunt's picture is on the page too," from, like, miles away. He starts to cry mid-sentence, embarrassed by a verb that his whole town is conjugating. The mother turns toward the tent opening where the light is bright, and then dims, and then brightens again as clouds decide and decide again whether to hold. There are days afterward that have a texture you could sand wood with. They begin with saws at first, light, and end with headlamps. And the middle is paperwork printed with lines that assume an address as a stable concept. The mother loops a string through a keyring even though there is no door to fit, because the act reminds her of a rhythm she understands. The girl walks beside her, the doll tucked under an arm so close it might as well be an organ. In a parking lot, a FEMA table hands out folders full of accommodation and impossibility. Behind it, an electric sign blinks an arrow that points to nothing helpful. The town begins to split into tasks. Utility crews string dip lines, where poles will be later. Bulldozers nose careful arcs, so as not to bury in a single scoop items no one knew they were missing yet. Volunteers come by the busload, bright shirts, good shoes. They are here because they saw a feed full of photographs that made the wind visible in a new, shareable way. They get out of houses that are not houses, a photo album swollen with rain and a cast iron pan, and a Bible open to a psalm that seems on the nose, and therefore suspicious. Someone finds an envelope of teeth from a Longo dentist visit, the name crossed out and replaced by an all caps keep. And for reasons they cannot explain, they bring it to the table under the blue tent, where it sits next to a bag of unmatched earrings and 3 sets of keys to cars that are gone and 1/2 of a pair of boots. Under the drone of news helicopters, the conversation shifts from survival to argument, to the more permanent change that arrives attached to towns after news crews leave. Building codes and what held up and what fell down are questioned in rooms with fluorescent lighting. The tilt-up walls, the roof fasteners, the safe rooms, some people had and some didn't, these all become language. Engineers walk the wreckage, making notes in notebooks that do not cry. They talk about uplift and anchoring and tornado-resistant standards. They are not wrong, and they are not enough. At night, in cots and motel beds and a cousin's spare room, the citizens of Joplin wake with the wind still inside their ears, then lay back down and rehearse the route to whatever place they will go in the next storm. The doll sits on the cot like a paperweight for a soul that is trying to lift. The girl plays a game in which the doll is the doctor and she is the patient. She says, "No shots, please," and answers herself in a voice that is a little deeper. "Just a little pinprick. It will help you breathe." Adults move around her, filling in forms, sending emails, arguing with insurers about what a tornado does to news riffs in about people whose names you didn't know before and now cannot, and know the man who shielded his wife with his body in a bathtub, the teacher who lay over children as the roof went away, the cashier who held the door as the wall lost an argument. St. John's announces a plan. A new hospital will be built on higher ground. The old one will be dismantled in staged grief, a floor at a time, as if dismantling could be gentler than that taking 3 days earlier. Mercy will be its new name. Mercy is a word that will do a lot of heavy lifting. Elsewhere, the trick the wind pulled in Joplin is a trick it performs in other places, with new props. 2 weeks before, across an Alabama spring, a supercell family cut through Tuscaloosa and beyond, and photographs flew out of counties like migrating birds. Months later, in May of another year, a tornado would bruise Moore, Oklahoma, for the second time with a punch people could not believe was coming for them again. In each of these, the same ritual emerges. Line tables, with what the air redistributed, hold up the things that name us, back to ourselves. Call out for ownership across 1,000 miles. Objects do a small part of healing's complicated work. They are not people. They are not replacements. They are handles. The girl becomes the person other girls bring their own losses to. She is 7, and then 8, and then, because years happen, even in places where time isn't, you can see in her how holding the doll helped her hands remember calm. At school, in a portable classroom set on a flat of gravel where a building used to be, she talks about the wind without crying. When it rains, she watches water travel down the outside of the window in elongated beads and counts them. Her teachers wear bright clothing that says, in 100 small ways, "We are cheerful because we want to make room for your fear. We will not let fear eat the future." Beyond the tents, the city formalizes some of the improvisations that saved it. It studies safe rooms and adopts new codes. Builders talk about hurricane clips and continuous low paths as if the words themselves might anchor houses into the earth. A siren study asks why the first sound sent so many back inside a chorus of previous false alarms, a hardening of normal. The National Weather Service looks at how its warning read over radios and televisions and modifies templates to punch through familiarity. Impact-based warnings that throw words like catastrophic into sentences that used to be calmer. Antennas are hardened. Shelters appointed. The football team carries a banner up a set of steps and into a stadium that used to be a dream. The banner says, "We are here." They have always been here. The banner says it anyway, because saying matters. The mother learned the geography of programs, case managers, debris removal, the alphabet of agencies. It is work that stings because it obscures the simple truth of loss under paperwork. On the table by the door of wherever they relieve in, now there is a clear plastic bin full of things that were saved. A shoebox of photos speckled with mold. A magnet that used to be on a refrigerator door of a house that isn't. The girl's drawing of a butterfly that looks like a bird leaning into a wind. The doll lies on top. A sentinel, a reminder and an argument against nothing mattering. The mother sometimes catches herself wanting to throw it away because it is a pipeline to a day she does not want to visit. She doesn't. She tucks a loose strand of yarn back under the others and says the doll's name quietly, the way you say the name of someone who helped. Under the blue tent one morning, a woman returns a wallet she found in her yard to a man who thought it had gone with the house. He laughs. "Small. I can't use these cards," he says, fanning out rectangles of expired plastic, but it's like getting my own name back. On the table, there are fewer items now. The volunteers are sunburned and tired and newly expert in finding last names by squinting at waterlogged ink. A child brings in a stuffed animal and asks if she can put it with the others. She says she found it in a tree and it looks lonely. A volunteer nods and places it beside a plate wrapped in a napkin and a stack of letters bound by line. The pressure of the days builds towards something you cannot name until it is on you. The heat arrives. Missouri summer honest and heavy. Tempers flare in lines. Kindness arrives 5 minutes later, carrying cold water in a cooler. A thunderstorm throws fat drops on tarps that drum like a festival. Wind gusts, and 1,000 faces turn up in a single motion toward a sky that will never again be innocent. There is a snapping sound, a tent rope letting go, and everyone jumps, bodies inheriting reflexes from a Sunday in May. On one of those afternoons, the mother is told it is time to meet with the adjuster again, that a decision has been made, that more signatures are required. She pockets a pen out of habit and then returns it to the jar, because habit breaks and reforming is the project now. The girl wants to come, the doll under her arm, because the office is in a building, and buildings are still magic. They sit in chairs that roll. Forms are signed. The adjuster looks 80 years old because tiredness makes us all translate into older languages. And when he reaches for the final document, the lights flicker and go out for a second as if the grid is performing a small ritual to mark the stakes. They come back on. The steady hum of fluorescence resumes. Under the doll's hem, the purple letters are as bright as the day they were written, a small insistence against erasure. By the time the first anniversary approaches, the city has grown a second skin. A temporary hospital has become a building with intention. Mercy has poured concrete into a rectangle with steel rising like stems. Plaques are laid in a park whose grass is too new to be soft. There are names carved into stone in a language that knows the delicacy of keeping the dead near, and the necessity of keeping them safe from weather. In a school assembly, the superintendent says the number again 158 because saying it out loud keeps it from being absorbed into a number, like 160 or 150, keeps it crisp and painful and real. The dough has been laundered in a sink and line-dried on a porch rail that belongs to a house built in the year after. The dress never gets as clean as it used to be. It doesn't need to. Its job is not to be spotless. Its job is to hold the shape of the world in a hand that once shook. The girl has made the doll a doctor's coat out of a white pillowcase. She has used the same purple marker to draw a name badge in block letters. She reads an article aloud to her mother about how engineers say new roof-to-wall connections resist uplift, about residential safe rooms tested in wind tunnels, about how forecasts changed after a city like hers was carved open. On the TV, a map fills with red again during spring, and a new set of cities is under the gun. She writes those names down and thinks of children there, of their toys on their beds, of the secret marks inside hems, of hands reaching. The legacy of a storm is a braid of policy and story. Joplin changes how the nation hears a siren. The phrase impact-based warnings begins to appear on crawls. The words tornado emergency are used more carefully, but with more force. Phones vibrate in pockets with wireless emergency alerts the size of a hand. Government text as intimate as a friend's. Building codes in southwest Missouri include stronger language about anchoring, about the bones of houses. Safe rooms get funded with grants that understand a steel door is not luxury. Schools draw drills that are not theater. Hardware stores sell bolts and clips whose labels are suddenly fluent in the grammar of wind. Other storms come because that is what other storms do. A line of supercells unrolls across the plains and into the south. The sea warms another degree, and the air holds more water, and hurricanes arrive fat with rain and higher on the tide. Towns in New Jersey and New York learn surge the way Gulf towns always knew it. A ribbon of moisture trains over a Texas county for days, and invents new hydrology in neighborhoods that had trusted rivers to stay put. Puerto Rico watches a grid collapse and learns how power is not just light but medicine and memory and, sometimes, life. In each of those other stories, objects do their subtler work. After a hurricane, a man in a parish north of a big lake holds a baby doll in police tape and wonders which child tossed it into the back of a truck in a rush. After a flood, a woman scrubs a quilt in a bathtub and says her grandmother's name the way prayers are said. After a wildfire, a boy walks the line where his house was and picks up a marble that the fire missed and puts it in his pocket. A small bright sphere that says this is mine in a day when nothing else can say it honestly. These are not the headline counts, which will always be the territory of numbers and their slippery friends. These are the souls, accounting. In the downtown of Joplin on a summer evening, a street fair sets up. There are funnel cakes and local bands under a strand of lights and teenagers who do not remember May 22nd the way adults do, and that is right and that is lucky. In a booth under a canopy, the volunteers who once manned tables under a blue tent have put up a different display photos of reunion. A caption below a collage reads, "Returned by strangers, 1 county over, 3 states over, from a ditch, from a fence line, from a tree 50 miles away." 2 women laugh in that wheeze people have when their bodies remember crying and choose the other thing. A man stands near and reads carefully, lips moving a little, as if rehearsing a spell. The mother reaches into a purse for cash and finds, at the bottom, a folded, stained slip of paper, the handwritten name of the Facebook page that served as the city's informal post office. She smooths it on her thigh, eyes passing over the letters, then puts it back because the paper, like the doll, is a key to a locked door she can choose when to open. She looks down to find the girl no longer quite a girl walking ahead of her. Into the warm night air with friends, a line of shadows long and uninterested in fear. The doll stayed home on a shelf, with the star stitched inside its hem, a private archive available at arm's length. Not 10 miles away, a new house, built with extra bolts, and a safe room that doubles as a pantry, holds another family who moved here after. They know the story anyway. Sirens wail on a test day, and someone checks a calendar to be sure it is the first Wednesday. Then goes back to stirring a pot. The bird bath outside holds a ring of water in which the sky sits upside down. A jay comes to drink and leaves. The dead retain their space in parks, in the rhythm of the year when the date comes round, in the quiet that descends when the weather radio clicks on and that calm human voice begins. Joplin carries on along Range Line and 20th and Maiden Lane, an ordinary American city that is also a specific and sacred archive of what it means to live where the air can take offense. The mother and the daughter and the girl she used to be and the doll that held a name are part of that archive. They put on shoes when clouds stack. They listen to the tone of a siren and talk about basements and closets and helmets like they are counting change. They also plant a tree. They also laugh too loud at something that would not have been funny before, because the scale is different now and mercifully elastic. When nature strikes back, as the saying goes, it does not recognize us as targets or wind and water move according to gradients and laws that have nothing to do with our anniversaries, our local festivals, our shifts at work. But when nature strikes back, people answer in the precise human tongue of levers and songs and casseroles and petitions and nails laid into joists at just the right angle. They answer with shelters and smarter forecasts and the stubborn institution of neighbors. They answer, sometimes, with a child's name written inside a hymn in purple marker, a declaration that insists, I am here, this is mine, this story remembers me. The doll did not know anything. Not in the way we mean when we talk about knowing. It carried a name through wind and ruin back to the person who wrote it. That was enough. That is sometimes all our artifacts ask of the future to recognize us when we arrive at it. Dirt-streaked, out of breath, still alive, and in need of a hand across a table. If stories like this move you, subscribe for more true events that change the world.